Hey there, business enthusiasts and beer aficionados. Welcome back to another frothy episode of A Shot at Business Central on a Beer. I'm Michael.
And I'm Ken. We're here to tickle your funny bones and tantalize your taste buds with the latest updates from the Business Central world, all while indulging in some hoppy goodness.
That's right, Ken. But before we dive into the depths of Business Central, let's take a moment to appreciate the finer things in life, like a cold beer and a crunchy snack.
Ah, yes. Today we'll be enjoying Alpha, a Greek beer for the first time on the show. There's nothing like an ice cold beer to keep our spirits high.
Absolutely. Now, on to the main course, Business Central. It's been buzzing lately, hasn't it?
Indeed, Michael. It's been a hive of activity in there. New features, updates, and more spreadsheets that you can shake a stick at. And today, we're going to be focusing our discussion on manufacturing execution, how to process a released production order in Business Central.
I hear you, Ken. It's a wild ride through the world of manufacturing and technology. But hey, speaking of wild rides, have you ever considered the energy appetite of AI?
Ah, the voracious hunger of our silicon comrades. It's like they're on a perpetual energy high, fueled by our incessant need for smarter gadgets and gizmos.
It's like having a pet robot that constantly demands to be plugged in, or else it throws a digital tantrum. And today, in our AI Snack Time segment, we are going to shock everyone with the amount of energy required to power all of those AI computers.
Indeed. It should be interesting to learn what the impact could be on our global energy consumption.
For now, let's raise our glasses to the ever evolving landscape of Business Central manufacturing and the insatiable thirst of AI for energy.
Cheers to that, and cheers to this AI generated script, Michael. And cheers to another electrifying episode of A Shot of Business Central and a Beer, which starts now.
All right. So now we get to jump into the beer. Ken, why don't you tell everybody what you brought for us this week?
Today we're another a beer first on the show, a Greek beer.
Absolutely a first.
So a Greek beer I found, it's called Alpha. It's a Greek lager. Comes in a green bottle, the big letter A in red on the green bottle, and underneath it it's ALFA, also in Greek, Alpha Lambda Phi Alpha.
Yeah, it's from a brewery called Athenian Brewery. And it's kind of funny. I went on their website to do a little bit of research about this beer. And you have to put your age in and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And this one actually wanted you to select where you're from, and the United States wasn't listed. So did you get this on the black market, or what'd you do?
I will not divulge my sources. I also did notice that I had to hit the British flag up on the top to get the site to display in English instead of Greek. And what tickled my funny bone on that site, as the intro script mentioned, is that it says that their beer production journey at Athenian Brewery began in 1963. And since then, we've been constantly evolving into the largest and most historic Greek brewery. So, time out. When I think of Greek history, I think of like the Parthenon, the Colosseum,
right.
Structures from thousands of years ago. 1963 is as far back as we got to go to become the most historic brewery in Greece.
I'm trying to think, though. I don't know if I know of another Greek beer. Do you, off the top of your head?
I don't. So maybe it's true.
So if anybody's listening and you want to get into the beer world, here's your chance to overtake.
Yeah, I guess the history just does not go that back that far.
From like monks in like
the 1400s.
Yeah. In Greece, 1963.
63, baby.
They're a wine drinking country.
Yeah.
Oh, too funny. Yeah, so I did a little bit of research on this beer as well, and in typical Ken fashion, I would say the alcohol content is 5%.
Yeah.
So it's not too much, but they're claiming Athenian Brewery is claiming that it's blonde, it's a light lager, cool, refreshing, rich foam, easy to drink, perfectly suited to Greek tastes. So what we're gonna do is Did you follow your instructions when you poured?
I did. I found instructions on GreekCellar.com that talks about this beer, and it provides some very specific instructions on pouring. For one, rinse the glass with cold water as to not create more foam than is needed. It's a little trick. I didn't realize that rinsing it with cold water reduces the foam.
Maybe it's the cold.
Then you serve with the glass held at an angle of 45 degrees at a distance of 5 to 7 centimeters away from the bottle. And be careful not to touch the mouth of the bottle. And then after filling half the glass, turn it upright and continue until the beer reaches 3/4 of the glass.
Which we did. We did pretty well. Not too much foam.
Very specific. It needs to be served anywhere between 3 to 4 degrees Celsius.
If you're in America, that's 37 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right. So, very, very specific instructions.
So if I had to ask you, what's the first thing you notice about this beer?
The smell.
Absolutely. It has a big, big skunk smell.
Yep. It's your traditional skunky beer. And actually, especially the green bottle too, it just really reminds me of Heineken.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the bottle has a little bit of a different design to it, but let's give it our first taste.
Delicious. It is. I like it.
Yeah, it's a good beer actually. If it didn't have that skunk smell, I'd like it a lot more. But the skunk smell, I mean, it's smooth, crisp, refreshing. I feel like I'm writing a commercial here.
Yeah. So for me, I shared you with this earlier, but for me, every once in a while, a beer, right? I guess any food or drink can do this, right? When I smelled that beer, I immediately thought back to a specific day in my youth, sitting around out on the back patio with some friends, listening to Bob Marley, drinking Heinekens.
I could see that.
Like I went through like a vortex in time.
Just brought you right back to it.
Straight back there.
Yeah, smells can do that to you. I'll tell you what. Yeah, it tastes. It's really good, to be honest with you so far.
It's crisp and refreshing.
Yeah. So I want to share a review unless you got one for beer. I forget you got one. Go ahead, go first.
No. Go.
Same one I got.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So there's a review on Beer Advocate. I thought this was funny. This guy says, this guy Ant77 UK. He's from England. It says, it took me a while to decipher exactly what the mofo this beer is and where it is from. I thought it was Russian or Ukrainian or maybe somewhere in the middle of. I think he's supposed to write whatever Kazakhstan, whatever he wanted to write. It looks like, but it is actually Greek. Thank the world for Google Picture Translate. Amazing, fresh, natural aromas, very small bubbles, and perfect smooth head. Mouth feels a little too light and thin, kind of artificial, and hops extract is obvious. The malt is great. Unfortunately, they've got the hops totally wrong, and I wanted to love it. I'm going to have to disagree. I think they got the hops right, actually, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Could it have been a little bit more hoppy? Maybe, but I guess it's all just personal preference.
Yeah, here's one, and the other one that I thought was funny is like it starts off kind of like nice and then not so nice, like easy drinking with a tad of bitterness and a hint of a foul smell. Like when you finish with foul smell, I mean, I don't think you're not enjoying it, right? A foul smell.
No,
it is a skunky smell. I get it, but
I wonder if you added a little bit of lime to it, if would take some of that smell away. I don't know.
I guess the guy you mentioned about the Russian or Ukrainian, he didn't know what it was. Ant777 UK. My guess is he probably, I guess, wasn't in a fraternity in his university days, because there's like Greek letters across the front of it.
Right.
And I think, and on the bottom it says Alpha Greek Lager.
Yeah, it specifically says Greek on the bottom. So where you got Russian, Ukrainian from, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he sounds like a typical craft beer drinker, right? I mean, this is more along the lines of just your everyday regular beer. It's not going to do well in Beer Advocate.
Yep.
Which
pale lager.
Right. Yep. And so for Beer Advocate fans, the score is 66, and it's an average rating of 2.79 out of 5.
Yeah, and the green beer, the green bottle that it comes in, they say that does lend it to that skunky smell.
Oh, does
Like
it?
a lot of beer bottles are dark brown. That's to keep the light out. The
Oh,
light actually impacts the flavor of the beer. The longer it sits in the bottle, the more it will develop that skunky flavor
interesting.
because it's in a light colored bottle.
I wonder if there's something to the design too, because it has like a camel's hump in the middle of it, or towards the top of it. It's a little bit
Yeah,
different.
that is a unique.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a
unique-
reason for it, or if it's just to draw your attention to it.
Yep.
All right. So next up, we are going to jump into the shot of Business Central. So stick around, everybody. All right, it's time for our shot of Business Central segment. And to start things off, we've got some news as usual for everybody. But to start off, I want to talk about the minor update 23.5 for Business Central 2023 R2 or release wave 2 has been released. It includes 7 platform hot fixes, 23 application hot fixes. And then one of them, what I thought was interesting is there's going to be a new improved update release process. According to Microsoft, during the 2023 release wave 2, they're going to be improving their update release process. So customers who don't manually schedule their environment updates can expect updates to start quickly after the start of the environment update window. To deploy updates more gradually to environments that don't manually reschedule the update to a different date. Update availability and default scheduling will vary per region. So it looks like they kind of want to get around to just getting everything updated as quickly as possible, which is good. Let's see what else we got. We got a couple events coming up. There's the Dynamics 365 Business Central 2024 Release Wave 1 launch event. It's going to be on April 4th, April 9th, and April 10th. 35 plus sessions, a live Q&A. Will include a link to register in the show notes. It's kind of interesting to see because every year these launch events seem to get a little bit more bigger, and now they're doing Q&As and
Yeah, and I would just like to, if this is the same launch event that I'm remembering from 6 months ago when they did the last 2023 Wave 2, I remember it was about an hour and a half long. Where's this
so
one?
this is a little bit different. This one has a bunch of different sessions now.
Okay.
So each session is like an hour.
The one I did was like a high level review of what's coming out, and I attended the whole event. I'm going to admit I was doing other things while it was on, but I was kind of headed on. I was listening to it, and they were covering all the different Dynamics products. And then they ended it. And I was like,
oh,
what about Business
I did
Central?
the same thing. I remember. Yeah.
And then I found out afterwards that there was like another tab.
Yeah.
They had recorded Mike Morton explaining the new features and upcoming functionality as a separate segment that was recorded. So I sat there the whole time waiting for Business Central. I could have just, I think, gone to the link and watched it.
Right, whenever you wanted.
Yeah.
This one looks to be a little bit more different. It looks like they're adding more to it. They're going to have like a typical Microsoft, what do they call that? Like the kickoff intro. I forget what they call the
keynote.
Yeah, like a keynote kickoff. Yeah, and the sessions look to be for specific to Business Central.
Good.
So we'll see. We'll see. All right. After that, then there's the Microsoft Business Applications launch event titled "Redefine What's Possible Using AI." That's going to be on Wednesday, April 10th. There's different sections, but there's actually a Business Central topic hosted by Mike Morton. It's called "An Usher in a New Era of AI and Dynamics 365 Business Central." So you're going to learn how to optimize processes and help employees complete tasks faster with the new Microsoft Copilot features. So interesting. I'm going to be attending that. I love the AI and the Copilot. See what happens.
Sure.
We'll see. And then Ken, what do you got?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to kind of give everyone an update on 2024 Wave 1 update that's coming out in April. So there is a page, what's new and planned for Dynamics 365 Business Central. Microsoft has been updating this. The last update, it looks like, I believe this was the last update, was maybe March 6th. but it has been updated to reflect the public preview that's available now as of March for all the different features, general availability date. A lot of them are April. There are others that are not April. And specifically for Copilot, there's several, like 8 total new features for Copilot that are going to be included in Business Central. It now has been updated so that to show that the public preview for most of these will be April. The general availability date for all of them except one are still blank. So there is no published availability date yet. We're anxious still in April to get our hands on some of these, the preview, so we can kind of see it in action and what it looks like and testing some of these things. But just the only one that it looks like right now will be the Copilot using richer development tools.
So. Yeah, I'm optimistic, right? Because there's actually a public preview. So I mean, it's there then, right? The features are being worked out.
Yeah.
Hopefully then the general availability won't be too long.
And just keep in mind that there are a lot of features that are still not available for public preview. So just understand, if you go in and you create a new sandbox and you use the version 24 preview, that there are several new features that aren't in there yet.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, I have no more news. How about you? That's about it.
That's about it.
All right. You want to tell them what we got coming up next?
Yeah. So hang tight. We're going to dive into manufacturing execution. We've talked a lot over the years now about inventory planning and purchasing and MRP and how to prepare for production. Today, we're just going to have a little discussion about what are the ways that you can actually execute your production, record your production activities against a release production order. So stay tuned. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Today in our feature segment, we're going to be talking manufacturing execution. So just talking about some of the standard features and functionality that exist in Business Central for actually recording activities against your production orders. So just to set the stage here a little bit for our discussion, Michael, we're going to assume that we are the Cronus Brewery.
All right.
Where we manufacture, brew our own beer. We also do bottling and then, distribution. So, and what we're going to not talk about today is everything that goes into planning for the production, right? So we're going to kick off this discussion at the process where we have a firm planned production order sitting out there that says that we're going to make 1,000 gallons of Cronus Pale Ale, and then we're going to, bottle it after that. So all the things that go into like making sure we have the right ingredients to do this and everything, we're not going to mess with that. So it's whatever, Tuesday morning, you're the production manager, you come in. All right, today we're going to be making the 1,000 gallons of the Cronus Pale Ale. We're going to kick off that production process. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pull up your firm plan production order, and you're going to change the status to released. So when you release the production order, typically that may or may not do anything. It depends on the flushing method that's set up in the system. So typically you're just going to change the status to a release production order, maybe print out your production document, what they call job card. And it's kind of a sheet that shows you how much of each ingredient you're going to need, the steps or operations that are part of the routing that you're going to go through. And again, I said usually nothing really happens. So that's the flushing method. So what types of what could happen? Well, depending on if you have certain items, you may want to automatically consume certain quantities of raw materials or components right when you start it. Because at the very onset of that production order, you just want the system to pull raw material inventory out of stock. So that's called forward flushing. The other option is manual flushing, in which case someone has to go in and record what's going on. And that would be done through the consumption journal typically. So at some point, if you're brewing beer, you're going to use, right, malts and barley and hops, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeast and other things too down the road. But at the very beginning, you're going to kind of make your malted barley and put your hops in there. And one of the reasons, especially in the food and beverage industry, that you can't use forward flushing to just say, well, just go take the expected amount of hops and malts and barley out of inventory, is because those could be lot tracked. So if that's lot tracked, we want to be able to record what specific quantities of which lots did we consume into that production order. So usually, and again, this also depends on whether or not you have warehouse management in place. If you're using warehouse management, you may actually create a pick, an inventory pick or a warehouse pick for those production items that you're going to need to have someone go get them. If you're not using that, you print out your material requisition report, standard report in Business Central, shows you for that production order, here's how much of each item you need to use. You'd go get those. And at some point, again, you go into what's called the consumption journal, and you record each item that you're consuming, what quantity and what lot numbers maybe. Doesn't have to be, maybe it's not lot tracked, but you still want to record exactly how many pounds of each raw material you took.
Okay.
Right.
So why would you not use lot tracking then? Is, let's just say you're in the food and for in our case, we would most likely use lot tracking for the consumption of beer, right?
Yeah, for food and beverage. It would be if there was potentially some non-food or beverage ingredient. I'm not sure if there's like what it could be, or something that's just not lot tracked.
Gotcha.
In a beer, like where it's food FDA in the United States approved, anything that touches the food or beverage has to be lot tracked. But a good example of something that's not lot tracked would be the labels and the bottle caps and the bottles when we get to the bottling phase. So that's, you have got the consumption journal. So the consumption journal records what raw materials am I using, and it's all fully integrated. So when you go in and you record that and you hit post, it's going to record automatically. It's going to remove that inventory and increase your WIP or work in process. It's all automatic. Now, separately, I have a routing, which defines the different steps that we need to do and what work centers we're going to use. So we may have 3 different brewing vats: vat 1, vat 2, vat 3. Your production order may be created with just a work center called vats. But then when we have this particular production order, we want to change that to say we're using machine center vat 2 to record this got produced on vat 2. And that vat may also have a different cost rate per hour, right? So we could have different work centers or different machine centers set up, and there may be different even cost rates associated. Vat 1's a newer vat. It's more technological, so it's more expensive to use it per hour. So you can change those on a production by production basis, order by order basis, which will kind of impact your actual costs for that. Now, you also want to potentially record your actual labor. Like, how many hours did you spend working on this? And how many hours did this work center get used? If you want to record that, you go into the output journal. So the output journal, you could just go in there and say, this production order 1, 2, 3, I'm making Cronus Pale Ale, 1,000 gallons. I spent 8 hours. And here's how many gallons we outputted: 980. And then you post it. And that creates the entries, the cost entries for labor and overhead, and updates work in process, and all that. Now, you would do that where you want to record who actually did this, what date, what time, how many did they output. It's possible to also back flush all that. So a lot of companies will just say, you know what, it typically is going to take 8 hours to do a batch. So I don't want to have my people recording their time and everything. So what you could do is you could just wait until the end of the production order. And then when you change the status to finished, to say, I just made these 980 gallons that we outputted of this, you could just, when you change the status of the production order to finished, you can just have the system automatically consume 8 hours of time and labor and overhead and apply that as a cost.
Gotcha.
Right. So, again, when would you want to record manual hours? It's when, one, you want to track who actually did the work. If you're recording like Michael did this one, or you have a high degree of variability in the amount of time it could take. Like if you're saying we're going to brew this batch of beer, but generally speaking, it's going to take 8 hours, but I don't know, it could take 4 hours today or 12.
Gotcha.
Or 16.
Right.
Then you want to do actual time. So you can actually run reports after the fact to say, hey, we know we say it takes 8 hours, but this year, what's been the actual usage? Well, shoot, it's been 10 hours. Okay, maybe we should update our standard routing to say that a batch of this is going to take 10 hours instead of 8.
So would you say that when people are reviewing that, let's just say, depending on whatever factors, a batch takes 2 hours one time and it takes 10 hours a different time and different times in between that. So would you say at the end of the year, then they should evaluate and say the average time is 4.5 hours and then just make that
the standard,
or should
Correct.
they, because there's such high fluctuation, they shouldn't record it each time?
Well, that whether they should continue recording it each time is up to them.
Okay.
I would make an argument if you've got a large enough sample size that says that everyone kind of agrees that 4.5 hours is a pretty good average on that.
I'd put it.
Then I would say let's just set that as the standard run time or time for that production order or for that routing step, and backflush it. And maybe we don't need everyone. We've got a good enough, idea of what it takes to do this. So maybe we can make our process and our everything more efficient,
Right.
kind of lean manufacturing, and avoid having people clocking in and clocking out or recording their hours for each production order task that they're working on. That kind of is the goal. I mean, if all things considered over time, you feel like you come up with a good average. To me, in a standard costing environment, that it's each organization kind of has their own thresholds for what level of variability they're willing to tolerate before they decide, no, we need to actually record it. Gotcha. The other thing where actual usage may come into play is where it's more in the dollar value, the value of that material or of that machine that you're using. If let's say that there's one ingredient in this beer, a certain type of hops, that adds the biggest cost factor, right, to producing this beer. Maybe that's an ingredient that we definitely want to do actual consumption. Weigh out how many pounds of these hops did we use, because that's going to make a big difference on our cost, right? But again, if it's always the same amount, if I'm always using the same number of pounds per gallon, then I don't really need to track it, right? So it's really about the variability that you have in the production process and the value of that. A super high value. Let's say you have a really sophisticated machine that we're using to produce something. And if I use it for 30 minutes versus 2 hours, that's going to change our whole profit picture on this production order. Then I would want to say, let's record the actual time, right? But if it's not a significant contributor to the overall cost, or it's always about the same amount of time, that's when you want to try to back flush as much as you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Another example of that in our brewing process, right? Once we've got all this 980 gallons of beer sitting in the vat, it's ready to be bottled. In the bottling process, that's where you probably can have a lot of that back flushed, right? Because you don't have a lot of loss, guessing, or at least your loss is estimated. You can estimate it.
Mhm.
Look, we're going to bottle. Typically, when we do 1,000 bottles, we're going to end up with a 2% loss factor. And it's always about that because of the, right? We just got it down. So just put in a scrap factor of 2% and then just record, okay, we ended up outputting 2,400 bottles or 100 cases. Just when you tell it how many you outputted, you can auto backflush the number of bottle caps, bottles, labels, and cases, right? That were needed, that got pulled out of inventory to do that. And again, same thing on the run time. So the setup time to set up that bottling equipment, maybe that time you track the actual time. How long did it take this person to set up the bottling line to run this pale ale down it? But once you get to the actual bottling operation, you turn the machine on and it starts bottling it. My guess is there's a low degree of variability there. So just come up with a good estimate of how long it takes per bottle or per case to produce it, and then just backflush that automatically.
Would you say most people using Business Central for manufacturing do that already? And that's not something that really needs to be reevaluated with their partners and whatnot?
I think so. Yeah, there's a pretty good understanding. Most production managers have a pretty good understanding already of what types of items should just be backflushed, and what things are the ones, like, imagine you're putting together some sort of machine, a custom machine that you're making. Things like nuts and bolts and fasteners and wire, maybe.
Right.
You're just going to backflush those because you're estimating how many you're going to need.
Right. It's inexpensive too.
It's inexpensive. They're quick to replenish. Those are the things you just want to backflush all those. But like a high value item, maybe like a motherboard or a controller that goes into some sort of digital mechanism. Those are the pieces that you're going to want to manually consume into the production order.
Makes a lot of sense.
Right. And then so as you go through the whole production order process, you're accumulating all this work in process, right? And at the end of the production order, as long as the production order is released, when you output against the last operation, that step, because the system sees that that's the last operation on the production order. So when you output against that operation, it will automatically put that finished good into inventory. So you want to be careful. What is your last operation? Some people will, on their routing, they'll actually, let's say the last operation is a quality inspection. They'll still add another routing operation after that called place into inventory or put into stock or something, which is that last operation that says, okay, guess what? We've done everything. We're ready to go. Let's officially put these things into inventory. Gotcha. So now they're available to be sold. Right.
Makes sense.
And then again, now even though, so my production order is still released, I've outputted those 100 cases of bottles into inventory. They can immediately now be picked, shipped, and invoiced to our customers. And the system will use what's called an expected cost for cost of goods sold against those. Now, if you're on standard cost, it doesn't matter because it's going to book the cost of goods sold at your standard cost. Okay. In an actual costing environment, it is important because as of that moment, that production order is still released. All the system knows is what your expected cost is. Doesn't yet know your actual cost because it's still released and more costs could be applied to it. So your sale and your cost of goods sold is going to go out at the expected cost. When you eventually finish the production order, you change the status from released to finished. That is the moment when it says, okay, this is now my actual cost. I have my finalized costs. So let's go ahead and book my actual cost. And guess what? The adjust cost process, our favorite process in Business Central, it's actually going to go see that cost layer, those 100 cases that I put into inventory, have been shipped and invoiced. And if that actual cost is different than the expected cost, it will actually adjust my cost of goods sold against all those invoices that went out and book those journal entries into my general ledger.
Very nice.
So it is important, especially in an actual cost environment, that you're finishing those production orders in a reasonable manner, like in a timely manner, because that is what books those actual costs against the inventory and cost of goods sold.
Can you set a period for like the adjust cost to go back and work only during a certain period of when or is it just?
No, it's got to be. Now what'll happen is if you've, let's say it's the end of the month, you've finished it at the end of the month, and now they're not finishing that production order, actually changing the status until the next month, but you've already closed the prior month. It will see that, and it will book all those adjusting entries onto the first day of the current month.
Gotcha.
Which could be important for some people, right? Because you typically want those costs. If there's a big difference between the expected and the actual cost, you actually want those to go into that same period that the inventory was outputted in. But the system will book it on the first day of the next month. So no problems there. So there is also, I just want to last note, there is what's called a production journal. So people might see the production journal and be like, well, what's the difference? You mentioned output journal and consumption journal. What's the production journal? Well, the production journal, I call it one-stop shop.
Okay.
So this is the case where, Michael, you were out, you're the chief brewer. You're out there, you're brewing the batch. You've got your your production order printed out. You wrote down how much of each raw material you used, how many hours you spent at each operation, and then how many cases you outputted. And at the end of that production, you're going to go into Business Central and you want to record all that activity for that production order. You would use the production journal. Because in that one view, one page, you have all of the items that need to be manually consumed listed, so you can enter your quantities and lot numbers of those items. You also have all of the routing steps that need to be manually confirmed. How long did you spend on each routing operation, and how many units did you output at each step?
Okay.
So you can enter all of this in one view and hit the post button. It does all of the posting, and then you just have to finish the production order.
So I'm assuming a lot of people ask then, why is there a consumption journal and whatnot? Why doesn't everybody just use the production journal? So I mean, I'm gonna guess because you create more errors if you just use the production journal, right? There's more, it's more possibility of you doing something wrong.
Correct. Yes. When you open the production journal, it shows you all of the remaining quantities and time to be consumed and units to be outputted. So it kind of makes it really easy for you to use. However, let's say I was just someone in the warehouse and I'm pulling all the ingredients for you. You're brewing this batch of beer. I got a pallet. I'm walking around the warehouse. I'm pulling all the ingredients for you. You don't want me in the production journal,
Right?
Because you don't want me outputting anything. So it's also about roles and responsibilities and separation of duties. So maybe I have a tablet and I'm walking around the warehouse. So as I go and I pull each ingredient, all I have is the consumption journal. So I can pick the production order. I say which item I'm pulling, how many, what lot, and then when I'm done, I can post that. But it's more about the separation of duties and also the timing of it, right? Consumption journal, output journal, those are things you're typically seeing people use as things are being done against the production order. where again, the production journal tends to be more of a after the fact. We're all done with everything. I've got it all written down here on this document. I just need to now record it in the system.
Have you ever seen like a smaller manufacturing company where they just use the production journal though, because they don't have the resources?
Absolutely. And it's not even necessarily about resources. It could be just about the production cycle time. Think about it this way. If I got a production order, even no matter how many raw materials I'm using or how many operations it is, if I'm going to start and finish that production order, typically, let's say in one day, I would argue that maybe you should be using the production journal.
Just because it's more efficient then? Because
it's timely, it's efficient, it's very efficient. And you're also not losing a lot in terms of the timing of the recording of that entry.
Gotcha.
Take, for example, so you're brewing your beer, right? It's going to take you 6 hours to make this batch, right, of wort, right? Okay. You're going to pull all those ingredients. You're going to write them all down. You're going to output your 980 gallons on your 1,000, on your batch.
Right.
At the end of the day, you're going to go in and record that. If you think about that from a planning perspective, there was a window of about 6 hours there where the material looked like it was available. It was sitting on the shelf in the warehouse, but you actually had it. So it could be misleading to someone. They go, right. Oh, it looks like we have X number of pounds of hops left. But you're going to reduce that at the end of the day. Short cycle time. But let's say that you open that production order and you weren't going to finish it until the beer got done 4 weeks later.
Yeah, you don't want that.
You don't want to be pulling all those hops off the shelf and malt and barley and everything, but not recording it for 4 weeks. No one would have any idea how much stuff is actually sitting on the shelf. Yeah. So if it's a 4-week lead time, you want to immediately record the consumption when you pull it off the shelf. I say near real time. Think of it, to get to real time, you need a handheld scanner or someone with a tablet on the floor.
Yeah.
That's unreasonable in certain circumstances, but maybe within an hour or a couple hours or same day, I'm going to record what's all the stuff I pulled off the shelf today. And I'm going to go at the end of the day, record all that consumption so that tomorrow morning, when someone comes in to do their purchase planning,
they know what's there.
They're up to date. Right. I've got all my stuff recorded into WIP. I call it near real time. So
coin the phrase.
So yeah, so your production cycle time is also very important in terms of should you be back flushing, forward flushing, or manual flushing, and if so, when? Yeah. So, that's why people say manufacturing can get pretty complicated. Well, because there's a lot of variables, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of steps to things. Yeah,
absolutely. The shrinkage or scrap. The potential scrap variability that you may have, the value of the inventory items, the production cycle time, and how long it takes to replenish those items in stock. All those things.
There's no one true solution that works out of the box for everybody, right?
No. I mean, there's best practices. There's things in certain organizations will have certain policies. Like they'll say, hey, any component that makes up less than 2% of the total value of a finished good should be just back flushed. We're not counting how many we used, right? So things like that, different companies will come up with different policies like that. But really the beauty of Business Central is that it really supports all of those scenarios. The key is just making sure we're setting up the system correctly to make sure that it's operating efficiently for your organization, right? Like you wouldn't, your production, your work centers, and your inventory items for the brewing of the beer will be very different from how your production orders are processed for the bottling side, right? Sure. Those are two different production orders. One, we're making beer. Two, we're bottling, we're producing cases of beer, right? So those are in one company. There's an example where two different types of products have very different manufacturing execution processes in place. So
I like
sorry,
it. I like it.
No magic bullet for you, Michael.
Well, not yet. AI's coming around though, Ken.
Oh, AI is gonna figure it all out for everybody.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of AI, then let's what do we got next? We're gonna jump into the energy consumption of AI. So
yeah, interesting.
Stick around.
All right. Closing it off here today with AI snack time. So we're still enjoying our alpha Greek lager. And we also got some Zapp's salt and vinegar chips to enjoy here during our snack. You had vinegar chips before?
I have. I still remember one of the first times I tried vinegar chips as a kid. Thought to myself, who would ever want to eat something like this?
And then they started growing on you?
They do, yeah. I kind of think that's how everything is, right? Even beer. When I first tried beer when I was young, I'm like, oh God, no.
Acquired taste.
Yeah. But you keep putting yourself through the punishment for some reason, and then you start liking it.
Yeah.
They're really good though. I've never had these Zapp's salt and vinegar potato chips. These are kettle style, New Orleans kettle style.
Oh,
they're pretty good, yeah. I prefer kettle chips over regular chips. I like a little bit of a bite or a crunch to it as opposed to fluffiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta have the crunch.
I always like the smaller, crisper French fries also, as opposed to the
Oh
bigger,
yeah,
more
floppy
full
one.
ones.
Yeah.
I like the little smaller, crisper ones too. So,
But I'm kind of weird, yeah. So I tend to overcook most things, right? Like everybody eats a steak medium rare. I gotta have mine a little bit cooked more than everybody else. If you're making homemade fries, I like mine burnt a little bit.
I generally like things more well done, except steaks.
Yeah.
That's one place I don't go well done. But generally speaking, yeah, like a good omelet, I like it well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed 100%.
Bacon, I'd rather go more well done than less well
better
done.
crispier than not. Yeah.
So, all right. So for AI today, we are gonna kind of delving into a topic that I think has started to bubble up on the surface of people's discussions. And that is, we're kind of sitting, over the last several years. Obviously, there's a lot of push around the world to reduce our energy footprint, right? To use less fossil fuels. And every country globally is pushing for each country to reduce their energy
carbon footprint
utilization and carbon footprint. So there's this big push to do that. And then in all of the sudden, we have this huge explosion of AI. And I don't know, maybe most people understand this, but these AI servers, these computers that are processing all of this information require a lot of energy. And it's kind of opposite, right, of what the trends. Everyone's kind of wants to push the trends of total energy consumption down, whereas AI is pushing it up. So I think what we want to just kind of talk about today is like how much energy does AI require, and what are realistic solutions for or the impact on energy availability on AI.
Yeah, going forward, it's going to be interesting, right? Like you said, most companies want to reduce their carbon footprint. For example, I think Microsoft, I have it here, they want to be carbon negative by 2030. And the Biden administration wants to eliminate carbon from the electricity sector by 2035. And I would say up until about a year or so ago, right, a lot of these companies were projected to have that, to meet those goals by that time. But like you said, within the past year, excuse me, AI has just overtaken everything and required, the consumption of energy. And we've got some numbers to talk about it. So let's first start off with a terawatt equals 1 trillion watts. Thank you. 1 trillion watts of electricity. So right now there are approximately 11,000 data centers in the world, and each data center runs around 100,000 servers. So if we do the math, that's 1.1 million servers. Okay. Each of these data centers uses between 240 and 500 terawatt hours per year. So that's 500 trillion watts of electricity. All right. So that means that if we do the math, they're using, between 2.6 million to 5.5 million terawatts of hours per year. So then if you were to break that down per server, and I apologize, this is a lot of numbers, but this is the number, remember. So it's between 2,200 and 4,500 terawatts of electricity used per year per server, right? Which is a lot if each terawatt is 1 trillion
Sounds like
watts. Okay, so by 2027, just one company, NVIDIA, expects to ship 1.5 million AI servers. Now, for these servers, we did the math. We're not going to bore you with it, but each server is going to use approximately 18,000 terawatts of electricity per year. So if you've got an average of
not each server, total, probably.
what?
Oh. Total, right? Terawatt.
No, each server. Right? You got 1.5 million AI servers, a consumption of 85 terawatts of hour for all of them per year.
All of them, okay.
Yeah. So if we just break it down and do the math, it's about 18,000 hours per server per year.
It's a shitload.
Right. Yeah. Which is 6 times more than like the server now, which is, So it's.
There you go. Yeah. 6 times. Yeah. Yeah. I have a stat. It shows from the International Energy Agency. They said that the electricity usage by data centers in 2022 is 460 terawatt hours.
Yeah.
And it's expected in 4 years, that's going to go up to over 1,000 terawatt hours, 150% increase in electricity usage within the next 4 years.
Yes, let me put this in perspective. Indonesia uses 360 terawatt hours per year as the country. Saudi Arabia, 346. France, 425. Germany, 490. So these data centers
will utilize more electricity than in these entire nations.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, so how are they going to meet these carbon negative numbers by 2030 and 2035? To me, it's not going to happen. I think you're going to see a lot of these big tech companies throw some money behind this, and you're going to hear things like, oh, we've discovered how to make coal burning more cleaner than what we do, and we're cleaning up the way we use fossil fuels and whatnot, so it's more efficient. We're not going to meet our goals, but we're still helping out the community, the earth.
Yeah. Bill Gates recently at a conference said that electricity is the key input for deciding whether a data center will be profitable or not, and that the amount of power AI will consume is staggering. So, and if you think about, where does electricity come from?
Mm-hmm.
Well, electricity comes from power plants.
Yep.
Power plants are traditionally powered by either coal,
right,
gas, or nuclear.
Right.
Now there's some that are maybe wind or hydro, right, or solar, but
not too many though.
But the vast majority of power plants globally are nuclear, gas, or coal.
Right. So I mean, in theory, when you're charging your Tesla, you're still using,
electricity, which comes from the grid.
Exactly, which is powered by coal, whatever it may be. You know what I mean? Right. So,
yeah.
But 6 times more than a regular. First of all, I mean, there's no infrastructure to support that type of usage. So, is that going to fall on taxpayers to?
No, as a matter of fact, the general understanding is that you can't even build out 100 gigawatts of energy in a few years.
Yeah.
Like especially through renewable energy, right? Which is what they're all looking to do. So I think everyone agrees that this gap this expected gap in electricity usage is not going to come from renewables. It cannot. It's not feasible.
Right.
So it's going to have to come from somewhere else. So to your point, it's going to have to come from gas or nuclear.
Right. Which we don't build too many nuclear plants anymore, but
no.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I just think there's too much money behind it for it not to advance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I did see in Michigan, I don't know if this is a national or how widely known this is, but there's at least one that I know of, nuclear energy plant in Michigan that they officially shut down just a couple of years ago. And they are now actively working on restarting it.
Really?
And the reason is because of this, because they're looking at the amount of energy and reliability that they're getting from renewables. They're seeing this revised forecast of energy requirements due to AI and data centers and other technologies. Cryptocurrency, right, is another one.
Yep.
And they're seeing that gap cannot be met. So what are they going to do? Well, nuclear is a clean energy, right? It outputs steam, right? There's nuclear waste disposal issues, but it's not a fossil fuel, right? But maybe clean burning natural gas.
Yeah. You still got to have the grid to support it though, which is hard to transfer all of it, the electricity.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine, didn't Rockefeller back in the day build whatever it was to improve different aspects of his business? I would imagine that these tech companies might have to join together and build better infrastructure to support the grid, to improve the grid so that they can utilize that energy.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is like that there are other countries around the world, China to name one. I think they're adding something like one new coal powered plant per week.
Yeah.
Is what they're averaging, the growth of coal powered plants that they're building.
And they're the biggest consumer of electricity too in the world.
Right. So I saw this one statistic was kind of staggering to me, is that the United States energy growth forecasts has doubled since 1 year ago. So 1 year ago, they put together a forecast for how much energy the United States was going to consume. And today, that estimate that they did has doubled. That's crazy.
Right. Could you imagine being in the energy department, whatever it is, and you get these numbers and you see,
you're like, that's gotta be
throw
wrong.
The papers up in there, like, I'm done, I quit.
That's gotta be wrong. Like weren't we trending downward
right,
in our energy usage?
Yeah.
Like, wasn't that going down? Like, no
more now. Yeah.
No, it's going way up. So yeah, there is a real challenge around this. I mean, so you have kind of there's these two input factors that exist on AI and how fast AI is going to advance. One are the chips, right? If you follow news like NVIDIA and
just released
other companies that are making these chips that can do AI tasks efficiently, there's only a certain number of those, right? So the growth is limited on the chip side, but even maybe the same or bigger issue is on the grid's ability to support the electricity requirements for these data centers that they're going to be building and expanding to support the growth of AI.
I think that's the biggest issue they're going to face, right? I mean, what do? You can't take more power than the city needs. You know what I mean?
Right. And as well as electric cars, right? I mean, the growth of electric cars is growing and growing every year.
Yeah.
There's a greater number of EVs on the road. So that also is going to put extra demand on electric grid.
Yeah, a lot of these places are already taxed. I think I read over the summer on hot days during California, they asked people to stop charging their Tesla and charging their electric cars if they could, because of the strain the air conditioning usage was putting on the power grid. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're already having problems, I mean, where I live, we're putting a data center in, so I mean, is it going to affect the village I live in? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, that coffee maker might not work in the morning when you get up.
It better work.
Sorry, buddy, there's a brownout for you. No electricity for you for 4 hours.
No way. I'm the only person in America who's got a modified coffee maker.
So yeah, no, so I just, thought it was an interesting topic to discuss, because it seems like it was when I read some of the numbers, and we talked about some of this, like over 1,000 terawatts of usage, which is more than Germany or Sweden or all of these fully like large industrialized countries. More energy than the whole country uses to support these data centers and AI. It's something that obviously it's going to take time to develop and come up with a strategy for how to do it. Maybe that will be like the impetus that's needed to really push for additional technological advancements in energy.
Yeah. Well, I know. So I think currently right now we can do wireless, or we can transport wireless electricity. I think it's for like 1 block, but I know Nikola Tesla is able to do it for either 1 or 2 miles wireless, right? Power something. So maybe if they get the refunding and the resources and they all put their heads together, maybe they use AI and they figure out how to do.
Well, they can't do the AI because they don't have the infrastructure to do it.
Right.
It's a catch-22.
Right. But maybe that's the route they go. Then again, you got all the electricity going through the world. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, we're not going to solve it today, Michael, but it was good, nice little chat.
Absolutely. Now we've got to rate the beer. But before we get into that, I want to give a shout out to one of our top listeners, Marcel. I'm not going to say his last name or what company he works for, but he actually sent me a podcast to listen to about beer and the fastest growing segment within the beer industry. Do you have any idea what it is?
The fastest growing beer.
Fastest growing segment within the beer industry.
Segment within the non-alcoholic.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah. But so this podcast was interesting, talking about different flavors and whatnot. But so shout out to Marcel for bringing that up, and
love Marcel.
Letting us know. All right, let's talk about this Greek beer Alpha. I like it. I like it a lot, and I generally don't like. I mean, not that I don't like. I generally don't rate these type of beers really, really high. But I'm going to go pretty high on this one. I got to give it. So it's got a bad smell. I can get past that, but it has no real bad aftertaste. The beer is good. I'm going to go 89. I'm giving it a solid 89.
Me too.
You too?
89, baby.
A solid 89. Yeah.
89.
It's a good beer.
Yep.
I mean, if I had like a safe list for beer, I'd add it to it.
Yeah, well, it's available at Benny's. You can go pick yourself up some.
Yeah.
Nice. I don't know. It's pretty rare. That's pretty rare that we have the same score.
Didn't that happen with another beer within the past?
Yeah, we'll have to do a little research.
Couple months.
Dig through the archive.
Right.
And see how often that's happened. It seems like it's pretty rare.
It's very rare.
We've been close before, but.
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever had the exact same score. I think we were within a half point or something.
Dead on. Yeah. How about that?
All right. Well, that brings us to the end. So everybody like the podcast, share the podcast, and all that good stuff. Ken, you get to take us home.
Bye.
As we end today's podcast, we want to give a big thank you to everyone who listens, shares this podcast, and leaves us reviews. You've taken a good amount of your time out of your day, and we truly appreciate it. Thanks again. And don't be afraid to email us at marketing@solsyst.com with your tips for the podcast, or maybe you'd even like to be a guest during an episode.